Sherwin, a very, very good afternoon to you. An exciting day in general. How has the day been? Did everything get off to a great start today?
Well, I think, Alicia, to be quite frank, I think a lot of people here are just relieved that we actually have arrived at voting day. People can actually go out and make their choices in this election. They have been persuaded now for something like 18 months since Hillary Clinton announced her candidacy in April last year, Donald Trump in June last year. And we've been going ever since. I think refreshing in many ways to start the process, the beginning of the end, as it were. And as you mentioned earlier, by early South African time tomorrow morning, when people are waking up for breakfast, having their morning coffee, we will probably have a result for you. Of course, there's not only just a presidential election happening today. This is an election to re-elect each of the members of the House of Representatives, over 400 of those, and a third of the members of the Senate. So it's going to be a very interesting day as we get into Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, to see exactly how everything shapes up. Yes, we will have a new president, but who will control the House of Representatives? Will it stay with the Republicans, or will it move to the Democrats? Who will control the Senate? These are all three areas that are at play in this election today.
Now, Sherwin, quite interestingly, I just want to ask this. Have you heard any talk? Because it seems that in South Africa, a lot of people are interested on how will the US elections actually affect the Middle East policy and also looking at the African economies. It's a big issue here.
Well, I'll tell you that Africa really hasn't come up in this election, right? Very interestingly, Africa hasn't come up, even though that it has become a focus in U.S. foreign policy in recent years in terms of the spread of terrorism. We've seen groups like Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, even ISIS now throughout Africa. So Africa, in that sense, for the United States has become a very important area, but also in terms of what they will do in Syria. You know, there are very competing plans here. Donald Trump has often said that, you know, he will speak to his generals once he's elected about a plan for how to deal with Syria, but he doesn't want to play open cards because that will be telling the enemy exactly what the U.S. approach would be. Hillary Clinton has given a very detailed policy on what she will want to do in Syria, for example, in terms of defeating ISIS. She has talked about safe zones in Syria. She has talked about a no-fly zone. So there are certainly policies out there, but as we've said in so many of these conversations, Alicia, is that this has been an election not about policy. It has been an election about personality. I mean, when we think back and look at the electoral race in 2016, we will talk about, you know, this erratic, off-the-cuff kind of brash billionaire that ran for office and confounded every political scientist that said he wouldn't get this far, and a career politician that has been in the public eye for 30 years, not without scandal, right? We've been talking about Hillary Clinton's emails, Hillary Clinton's days in the White House, supporting her husband through a number of scandals. So, you know, hopefully come Wednesday morning, we'll actually be focusing on what these candidates can do as president for the United States.
Look, Sherwin, we had the pleasure of witnessing Hillary and Bill actually going in to cast their votes. But do tell us, have you heard any word on whether Trump has voted, and in which state has he voted, for that matter?
Well, they both vote in New York State. Their residences are in New York City. Hillary Clinton has a resident upstate in an area called Chappaqua. She voted this morning with her husband, Bill Clinton. Donald Trump is expected to vote this hour, probably at the top of the hour, around 10 o'clock. I'm sure we'll bring you those visuals as that happens. He'll probably be joined by his wife, Melania Trump. So he will vote, and I imagine he'll be voting for himself.
Absolutely there. Sherwin, a very quick one. We understand that nearly 45 million people had already cast their ballots in advance voting. How does that advance voting actually work? And when will we get those results of the advance votes?
Well, what that does is it allows the concentration of people on election day at polling stations to be reduced. You know, you have a lot of old people who perhaps cannot get to voting stations on election day. This is the middle of the week. This is not a public holiday in the United States. People have to get to work. So it allows older people. It allows people with disabilities. It allows, you know, for various reasons, you're going to be out of the country. It allows people to vote early. So we have, 45 million people that have voted already. But those ballots only get counted when polling stations in the various districts close. So we don't actually know what the results of those 45 million are. What we do know is which party affiliation the voters have. And we are seeing a strong turnout in this election. We are seeing record numbers from Latino voters in swing states like Nevada and Florida. And come ballot counting day early tomorrow morning, we might have a shock for Donald Trump in terms of the record numbers of Latino voters we are seeing voting, and of course with the background knowledge, of course, that he has been quite disparaging to certain minority groups in this country.
You know, Sherwin, I just wanted to find out from you. I can see there's long queues behind you. Everything looks like it's going by peacefully. Usually when we're talking about elections, this part of the continent, we're always asking, have there been any incidents that have been reported? Do you take us through the atmosphere of the whole day in terms of what has been happening today in the States?
Well, there's a strong security law enforcement contingent around the country. You know, there have been some concerns about terrorist threats. This is a huge national event. We saw the FBI release a statement earlier last week talking about the fact that they suspect that there could be some terrorist attacks in places like New York, in places like Virginia, in places like Texas. We haven't seen any of that. There's a huge law enforcement contingent. There's actually a couple of police officers at this polling station, and I suspect you will see police officers at probably every polling station in the state. In terms of electoral violence, this would be unprecedented in the United States. But I imagine the reason you're asking this question is because one candidate in this race has made it quite clear that he will only decide whether to accept the results of this election come election day, which would be quite unprecedented in this country. There have been concerns about, Donald Trump has certainly raised concerns about poll rigging, that this is a rigged system. He has spoken a lot about voter fraud. And he has a contingent of voters in this country that are diehard supporters of him. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of the narrative, the rhetoric that comes out once the results are announced later here tonight.
Thank you so much, Sherwin. We'll definitely check up on you once again later on as the results start trickling in. That is our U.S. correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Peace. He's live to us from the polls in the U.S. He's in Harlem, and we will definitely have more updates right here on News Today.